This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
Becky Lynch is going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Hey everybody, welcome to the current state of WWE, and boy do we have a lot to talk about tonight with our co-host every week, Anthony DeMarco, as yes, Payback has just occurred, well, 2 nights ago. We'll put a bow on that, wrap it up real nice for you, and put it under the Christmas tree, and it'll be the final discussion about Payback tonight. We'll do that in the second half, and I mean, we'll start in just a moment with the whole CM Punk rumors and coming to WWE. Should he not? Will he not? So we'll start with all of that in just a minute. But first, welcome to the show, Anthony. How you doing, man?
Not too bad, man. Had a good time watching Payback. And, it's a B-level pay-per-view. Nothing astronomical happened. Nothing super groundbreaking happened. But I think that it was just another example that under the Triple H era, we should always give pay-per-views the benefit of the doubt. And not to say that every pay-per-view is going to be a home run. Like, I thought SummerSlam was disappointing, relatively speaking, to its expectations and the overall history of that event. But under Triple H's regime here that has been going on for about 13 months or so, maybe a bit longer than that, and we've talked about a lot too, is that even B-level pay-per-views now feel important. And I think that, relatively speaking, Payback did deliver.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I came away the same way I felt about so many other events, other than SummerSlam, oddly enough. I felt the same way about 90% of the events since the Triple H regime took over, and came away going, wow, okay, that was way better. And I attributed it a lot to the wrestlers themselves, not necessarily to the booking, although the booking was generally good. I attributed it to the guys and gals in the ring who were able to have enough time to tell a story. That's what they're trained to do. That's what they did at a premium level last night. Particularly with Trish and Becky Lynch, and they over-delivered on so many levels. I mean, I'm not trying to go through match by match here, but if you're looking at this from an expectation standpoint, and you're going, man, this match totally blew me away from what I thought it was going to be. Was that one of those matches?
For sure, and I think overall that entire program has been underwhelming. But, even though it's been underwhelming, I'm happy that we saw it, right? And I know a lot of people have been dunking on Trish here, but if I'm being honest, that program was more underwhelming because of Becky Lynch. And I just think that Becky Lynch has been stale for quite a while now. And I go all the way back to her feud with Bayley last year that was mega stale and really nobody had any interest in. And I just think that Becky has kind of been the common denominator here in terms of, I don't want to say boring, but just stale storytelling. And it feels like she's caught in a time machine and won't leave 2018 or 19. And, I like Trish's work. Is she, an A+ in-ring performer? Is she, even in the top 5 of women wrestlers right now? Obviously not. But I really think that Trish came back in this semi-full-time run since, let's say, WrestleMania, and has really given us a lot. Like, I can't say enough about Trish, and relatively speaking, I don't know what more we could have expected of her, including elevating a star in Zoe Stark. Like, Zoe Stark already feels like a star. And look, a lot of that is on Zoe Stark's part, on her alone. She's in incredible shape. I think she's already a decent promo, good in the ring, but Trish has elevated her and kind of put her over after the cage match on Saturday night. And to be quite honest, I lie this more at the feet of Becky Lynch as to why this program kind of felt flat, even though the final payoff was was over-delivered, let's say, more than what we were expecting.
That's an interesting take. I didn't think that, as you look at the Becky Lynch and Trish program, a lot of people were saying, oh, it's Trish, she shouldn't be here, she can't cut good promos, all of that stuff. And some of the criticisms are fair, but people very rarely are looking at Becky as the culprit of this. And it is kind of an interesting argument to be made that Becky has actually been the one that's been flat And
common denominator.
Yeah, that's what it is. And it's weird to say, given all that she's accomplished, but she feels, now that you bring it up, kind of like she's been going through the motions of her programs for a while. And she went from a heel, all of a sudden transitioned back to the man, literally overnight. Went immediately back to that character, no changes. Like you said, back to the 2018 WrestleMania 35 main event man. And while there's nothing wrong with that inherently, it's just kind of a de-evolution of the character, or rather a kind of sustained character that feels like it needs to evolve more. Her promos haven't exactly been on fire. It does feel like she's been uninspired for a while, and people keep waiting for her to go to Rhea, which I thought was going to happen after this matchup, but it looks like she's going to Tiffany Stratton over on SmackDown. She's the NXT Women's Champion. So I guess Becky's going to be going over there, floating around for a while before they get to Rhea and Becky. But hey, credit to Trish in this. Trish killed it. I don't know if anyone saw her post-match, but she had a massive, my God, she doesn't need to be doing this right now. Like her age, her legacy, she doesn't need to be doing this. So people went into this going, oh my God, I want this program to end. And people came out going, man, I actually wouldn't mind one more match from Trish, or, if this program went one more time, I don't know if I'd really hate it, because the match was so damn good. And this arguably may have been Trish's best match ever. When you think about her body of work, it may have been, from a wrestling perspective, one of her best. So, I really had no issues with this. It completely blew away expectations. So, now, what about some other big stuff? I don't know if you wanted to comment on it with Shinsuke Nakamura and Seth Rollins. That was the other thing I wanted to ask, too. Did you enjoy that match, and did you enjoy the outcome?
It was somewhat predictable, but I think that you brought up a good point. I believe it was your Raw review last week, or maybe your Payback preview, I'm not quite sure what it was, but you said just the fact that there was a little seed of doubt planted about Shinsuke winning, they did their job. And I just think that, again, under the Triple H regime, and it doesn't come without flaws, but I think what he has done terrifically has made you care about stories that that 3, 4, 5 years ago you wouldn't have cared about. And that if this program was going on in, let's say, 2017, like when Shinsuke was feuding with Jinder Mahal for the WWE Championship, you wouldn't have cared, and you wouldn't have thought Shinsuke had a snowball's chance of hell of winning the championship. But that's the way that we came into this. As soon as we saw Shinsuke attack Seth, we were just like, okay, here's like a filler feud while Seth waits for his bigger and his more true opponent, a true risk at this. All of a sudden, we got a true mission from Shinsuke, and you saw a big deep dive into character development and motivation and why Shinsuke was doing this. And I think we've seen that at all levels here, like where you will care about matches because of builds that you typically wouldn't really give a damn about. And I always I don't always, but one thing that I would equate it to was like the Alpha Academy against the Viking Raiders from, let's say, a month or two ago, where no one really cared about it. It wasn't all that significant, but WWE invested time into at least creating some kind of a story, telling us as to why this was happening. And I felt they did that tenfold with Shinsuke Nakamura. A bit of a predictable outcome, obviously, with Seth retaining the championship, especially at a B-level pay-per-view. But it was a good match, and there was that seed of doubt of Shinsuke actually being a true threat to the Seth championship.
That's all you can ask for. And people that were down on this program, and I was like everyone else when this first happened. Like you said, we were just like, oh, okay, well, Shinsuke heel turn, I guess fine, it'll be okay, they'll let Shinsuke say 5 words and that'll be it. And we got a transitional segment with Shinsuke that tore apart his family, talked about Seth's back, brought to light an injury that many of us didn't know existed that is real, let Shinsuke speak in his native language. His body language is just superb. The way that he attacked Seth and then just kind of stared at him, his attacks from behind, It's all been brilliant. The match that they had here was, it's as good as you could have hoped it would be from an in-ring perspective. Again, not perfect, but I wasn't expecting perfection. But there were moments in that match with the Kinshasa from behind. I go, hey, this isn't impossible here. It's not impossible. The story was his back and the targeting of his back. Excellent story to tell. People came out of this really hoping for another. And from what I understand, that's actually what is tentatively scheduled for Fastlane is, part 2 of Shinsuke and Seth, a program that perhaps WWE looked at and said, yeah, this is a one-off. We'll go to somebody else in Fastlane. But now they have a true opponent in Shinsuke, and people want more of him. And you know what? Even when Shinsuke gets away from Seth, and I still don't think there's any chance he'll win, but even when he gets away from Seth, I hope that they don't just put him back into mid-level obscurity. I hope they continue to build on this, whatever this is, this anime version, this subtitle version of Shinsuke is just awesome. And I hope that they don't just shove him to the side and back to the, back of the line, pal. Thanks for your contributions. I hope they do something with this for Shinsuke and it just doesn't go back to where he was.
Do you think that he could actually be a future world champion, or do you think he'll always just flirt with being like a tweener?
He would have to be consistently this good and intriguing for WWE management to be more convinced. I think that they're looking at this as like, all right, we caught lightning in a bottle here, but is this lightning sustainable? And if it is, down the line, when Seth's run is a little bit deeper and longer, and you could say, okay, he's been champion now for a while, which, by the way, it's been over 100 days, which is short in comparison to Roman. Everything is. But down the line, maybe if he doesn't, if a year from now, if Seth is still champion and Shinsuke is coming back around here, sure. But not in the short term. I think their eyes are now set on Survivor Series and then Rumble and Mania. They probably aren't going to do it unless things explode. So I doubt it.
The only other thing I want to touch on Backlash-wise, and then we'll get to CM Punk. Well, actually, quickly, I wanted to say I really liked Rhea and Raquel. And I'm not a massive Raquel fan, but maybe it was just the visual, but it felt like a legit fight, did it not? Because of the stature of both women.
Maybe that's why, and I gave it a less than positive review. I wasn't super down on it, but it felt clunky at first. I mean, there were a lot of weird missed botch spots that kind of took me out of the moment, and that happens. But it felt like they just haven't got enough minutes with each other in front of a live crowd, and things will improve as they work more together. And so I wasn't as high on the match, but maybe that's because, like you said, it didn't feel like a polished wrestling match. It felt like power for power, which was the story, but it felt, again, clunky, but also like a more realistic fight. Yes, I would agree with that.
And I will say, I wanted to give Miz some flowers because I think the Miz is a guy that is actually really talented, and most of our gripes with him is booking related as opposed to his actual ability as a wrestler. And I do think that he did a hell of a job with John Cena and LA Knight in that match. And I just think that that entire match with John Cena adding to it, kind of putting LA Knight over, was really well done. But in classic, current state fashion, I have to take a few shots at Cody Rhodes. Is he the GM of Raw? Did I miss something? Is Cody Rhodes now the general manager of Monday Night Raw?
Yeah, he now is not only endorsing people, he is now cashing in his political chips to make people get people traded to the opposing brand. And how this really is supposed to improve his career, I have no idea. It was just a move to endear him further to the crowd, which is just ridiculous. I mean, I have completely, and really thanks to your shove, I have completely turned on his babyface character. I gave it a shot. I gave it a try. And I have, as I mentioned last on my Payback review, I have jumped off the train. I have tuck and rolled, and I'm bruised and battered, but I'm off.
Why does he have to have his grubby paws and everything? Yes, he had that program with Brock Lesnar. It was a good program. Even though I hate Cody, it was a good program. It paid off well. the match at SummerSlam was actually pretty good. Brock does the cool, putting him over thing, all that. Great. But it feels like he doesn't really have anything going on of his own. And he's just sticking his grubby, greedy little... Like, he has to touch everything. He has to be the spokesperson for everything. He has to be the one to give his 2 cents on everything. And now he's making decisions for the brand. And even him, like, as him and, like, Jey Uso, like, cross paths before Jey gets in the ring, where he's just like, I hope we know what we're doing. Like, who's we? Who are you speaking on behalf of? Why are you bringing him to Monday Night Raw? Why were you the one lobbying for him? Like, shouldn't have WWE been like, man, like Jay's a good asset. Like, we can't let him leave. Like, if he doesn't want to go stay on SmackDown, we'll just go to Raw. Like, remember when Rey Mysterio asked Triple H to let him out of his contract last year?
Yep.
Because he wanted to get away from Dominic, and Triple H brought him into his office and said, look, well, I'll just bring you over to SmackDown. You know, a logical thing. But no, now we have to have Cody Rhodes be the guy who pulls string. Why does it take pulling of strings to get Jey Uso on Monday Night Raw?
Yeah,
like
it shouldn't be. Yeah, right. Management should be worried about this. Why does Cody have any vested interest in this? There's nothing that would be advantageous for him other than to endear him further to the crowd. That's it. Because Jey Uso is super over, coming off of the program with his brother, which I'm actually glad they're on separate brands. Hopefully it stays that way. I'm really not interested in Jimmy versus Jey right now. And we all need a break from that story anyway. So it's good. I think it's the right move. But to put this award on Cody being the reason that he came over is just it's nonsensical. Again, why is a wrestler cashing in his political chips to bring Jey over, a guy that he was just battling in the bloodline? It doesn't give him any kind of advantage on any level, really. And by the way, what political stroke are we talking about with Triple H? Like cashing in your political chips for what? And then you, like you said, management should be the one. Adam Pearce, at least in story, should be the one concerned about this stuff. Why is Cody concerning himself with this stuff? And then, of course, you get his stupid half-ass smile talking to the Pittsburgh crowd. And Grayson Waller, thank God, cut him off.
He's like, no,
he's
we're
like,
not doing that.
Yeah, I'm like, thank you. Like, I'm just like, yeah, everyone booed. I'm just like, no. You just saved us all from his just self-incessant need to mention the name of a city, to ask a question that can't be answered by a large audience. I'm done.
It makes no sense. And it's just like, so what scares the living you-know-what out of me, to be quite honest with you, is this is them slowly starting to plant the seeds for Cody Roman too.
Yep.
If I'm being perfectly honest, maybe that's why it pissed me off subconsciously to the extent that it did, because I'm just like, oh my God, they're going to do it again. He's going to win the Rumble again, and he's going to challenge Roman again, and then he's going to win, which is why I always hate the rematch at WrestleMania, especially in a back-to-back fashion, because you know that 9 times out of 10, the guy's going to, even the odds. Now, obviously, there's exceptions, specifically Shawn versus Undertaker and Triple H versus Undertaker. But I always just think back to Rock Cena. Like, you knew going into WrestleMania 29 that Cena was beating The Rock. And I hate it when it's that obvious. But anyway, it's just, I don't know what they're trying to do with Cody. And again, look, I understand that we are in the minority by a long shot and everyone has a raging hard-on for this guy. Pardon my language. I don't get it, but I've accepted it begrudgingly. But he is the most pompous, self-absorbed a-hole I've ever seen on WWE television who wasn't meant to be that. I've seen pompous a-holes before. I have. Randy Orton was kind of like that. Triple H had a run like that. Like, you kind of see it even with like Grayson Waller. But I mean, I don't get why people love him so much. There's a part of me that thinks WWE is pushing him to the extent just to dig a dagger into AEW, which we could get to as well. But I don't get it. Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand. And again, this isn't me saying that I hate Cody Rhodes as a wrestler. Like, if he was just even in the same exact character, but just like in the upper mid card, I wouldn't care. I would be like, he's not my cup of tea, but he's in the upper mid card. He's not shoved down our throats. For everyone who Okay. Shat all over John Cena for a decade. I came close there.
That was close.
Who shat over John Cena for over a decade for being shoved down our throats. Cody Rhodes is worse than John Cena right now
because he's also condensed into a much shorter time frame. Like Cody Rhodes came back, didn't lose a match, came back after he was injured, number 30, wins the Rumble, nearly won the main event of WrestleMania, and almost never loses matches. I know he lost one to Brock, but he eventually won the program. So yeah, he's essentially undefeated in programs. And you're right. He is this pompous a-hole it's masked and deodorized with smiles and suits and bleach blonde hair and catchphrases and sing-along music. It can be masked, but you and I and probably others out there are seeing through this crap. And again, this is just a knock. It's a massive knock on his babyface character. But looking at all these things, we would be saying the exact opposite in complimenting him if he were a heel. So I don't know about you. I see no, in my crystal ball looking forward in the next 6 to 12 months, I see no possibility of them turning him heel. Do you?
Oh, 0%. And that's another thing that enrages me and pisses off every bone in my body is that they are positioning him to be the face of the company.
Yeah.
That's what they want. And even just a little thing as when they had the tribute to Bray Wyatt on SmackDown and Terry Funk, where he was standing right beside Triple H. Yeah. And it's like, that is where they view Cody Rhodes. They view him as the top babyface, the guy, the ambassador. Like, to be honest, in a lot of ways, like, it feels like he's kind of becoming the successor to Roman Reigns already. Like, he's taking the place of Roman and Roman is slowly taking the place of Brock. Like, that's kind of how this is going for me. Like, and I don't know how old Cody Rhodes is. I want to say he's probably in his late 30s.
Yeah, he's about my age, like 38 or so, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, he doesn't strike me as a guy that you could build around. Like, how many more years could he possibly go at this level? And he's a damn good wrestler. I really like Cody Rhodes as a wrestler. I think he's a good promo, even if I don't like the content. Like, I still have to give the guy his flowers. He's a really coveted asset, but it's just, I don't like how they're forcing him to be something he isn't. Like, it is okay for him to be at like a Drew McIntyre level or a Sheamus type of level. But I'll be honest with you, like, I think that Drew McIntyre is a much more coveted asset than Cody Rhodes is, in my opinion. I think Drew McIntyre, had it not been for COVID, probably would have exploded as a guy on tier with like maybe not close to Roman Reigns, or maybe not to Roman Reigns, but maybe close to it. I just don't get why they've like landed on this obsession where he has to be like this over the top, holier than thou, above everyone save for Roman type of guy. I just don't think he's that.
I think you made an astute point there where he feels, I'm paraphrasing what you said, but he's a spokesperson for the company. He's an ambassador for the company. He's like a white version of Titus O'Neil, except he's actually wrestling regularly. Like, he feels like he's a spokesperson that cuts company approved promos, but occasionally wrestles a match. He doesn't feel like this kind of organic pro wrestler that's super easy to relate to. He just feels like he was cut from management, and especially with his suits and everything else. And he's so just self-aware when he's talking. It's obnoxious. I'm actually, while I agree he's a good promo, the way he cuts promos, this cadence, all of this stupid smile. I want to see someone knock his teeth. I mean, I don't know what more to say about it other than I agree. I do think they're grooming him to face Roman Reigns at WrestleMania if, of course, Dwayne isn't there. I mean, Dwayne obviously trumps everything. But, all right, well, before we get to CM Punk, any closing thoughts on Cody or Payback in general?
I'm going to leave Cody. But no, I think that it did exactly what it had to do. The pay-per-view, that is. I think it advanced storylines. It advanced some wrestlers, LA Knight specifically. It told more of a story with Seth Rollins and his back. I think that it did everything that you would have hoped it to do in a perfect world.
All right. Well, then we're going to transition to CM Punk, the news of the day, which, I mean, we got notified a day or two ago about Tony Khan releasing Phil Brooks, CM Punk, from AEW for cause. He announced it, and which was, bad timing considering that their all-in event was in Chicago and he got fired before the event. So quite an interesting timing. Obviously, this is not part of a story. This is real. He got fired. We've heard about the incident with Jack Perry, and he confronted Phil Brooks, CM Punk. He confronted him, and the two got into a scuffle. And Jack Perry also has been suspended indefinitely. So there is some fault, not just on CM Punk's end, but of course on Jack Perry. We none of us were there to see it, but there's always two sides to every story, and you can't. As much as I don't like CM Punk behind the scenes and things I've heard and things he's done on camera, I think Jack Perry is still partially, even maybe majoritively responsible for this. Either way, this is not good for CM Punk's resume. It doesn't exactly, his history doesn't help him, considering everything he's done on camera with Tony Khan, what was a year and a half ago or whatever it was, and he's sitting there chewing down and shoving down a cheeseburger and acting like a fool and embarrassing the company. I'm a CM Punk fan from the perspective of, I respect what he's done. I was excited when he returned, but not a good look as to what he's done for the company, and he badmouthed the company, saying I hate it here and all this stuff that you just don't do, man. You don't do that, because guess what? It doesn't exactly make your future employers look at you with envy and make them want you, because they're going to say, well, they're going to do the same thing to me. And so I'll stop there, but I don't know what your thoughts on the incident with AEW.
I'll preface this by saying that I think AEW, the way it's run, is very Bush League. I think that, and I think Jim Cornette has said this a bunch of times, it's run by a super fan who also happens to be a billionaire, or his dad's a billionaire, and it's like he's playing live with his action figures now. And just the fact that Tony Khan is like the owner, CEO, and GM, like, just has nobody else in a prominent position, kind of speaks to that. And I guess you could point to, like, that was Vince McMahon for 30 odd years or whatever, but like Vince also started as a ring announcer and grinded his way to where he was. Like, Tony Khan just pretty much had everything handed to him. So I do think that there are a lot of problems in AEW, and that it's kind of like the inmates run the asylum there, and it is just a glorified indie show for like a bunch of indie friends to do to have fun with each other. At that same time, you have veteran wrestlers like Daniel Bryan making it work there, Sting making it work there, Jon Moxley making it work there. William Regal was making it work there. You have like a true superstar in MJF making it work there. So even though there are a lot of inherent problems with the company and a lot of house cleaning that Tony Khan needs to do on his part, and I don't think that he really does a good job of reining stuff in there just based on things I read about the company. Like, I don't watch AEW. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not a fan of the wrestling style. That doesn't make it bad. It's just not for me. I think what CM Punk has done to his own image over the last 12 months is it's kind of tarnished his reputation, and it's kind of made people go back and reevaluate what happened in WWE 9.5 years ago, or whenever it was, in early 2014. And when you really think about it, like, he wrestles in the Royal Rumble and then just walks out. Like, when you really break it down, it's like, who the bleep does this guy think he is? And that's not to say that everything in WWE is perfect. Certainly not at that time. Like, early 2014 was arguably like the peak of like Vince just refusing to give the fans what they want, where, he had a returning Batista win the Rumble and pressing down the yes movement and all that. And look, we've seen people be not happy with the company. And then when their contract expires, they say, you know what, I want to do something else. We saw Daniel Bryan do it. We saw Dean Ambrose do it. Cesaro walked away. Like, it's not a foreign concept, nor does it make you wrong for just, wanting something else. But the way CM Punk kind of went about it in terms of walking out the night of Monday Night Raw after the Royal Rumble, insulting Triple H on the way out, going on Colt Cabana's podcast and ripping the company. Like, he always kind of came off bitter, but people were so infatuated with the 2012 version of CM Punk and the recency bias that that's the Punk they remembered, and they just always sided with him. Not to mention, Vince McMahon didn't really hold a lot of benefit of the doubt with the crowd or with the fan base. But after he pulled the stunt last year where he was eating burgers or muffins or whatever, and he was just like, I'm old, I'm beat up, I work with children. And then he comes back and, he's not in the best ring shape. You see that he's losing it a bit, but he's still acting all holier than thou. You hear how he reacts to, like, and even if Jack Perry said something that was offside, which it surely was the case, as he was suspended as well, and surely the Elite did do some things bad on their own part as well. He just doesn't handle himself as a professional. He thinks his you-know-what doesn't stink. He thinks he's better than everyone. He always thinks he's right. And at this point, it's just like, dude, you're just not as good as you think you are. The reason why everyone thought you were that good was because you had an amazing 24 month long stretch, and then you walked away. And we never got to saw you again. And that was just the version that people perpetually played over in their heads for the 7 or 8 years that you weren't on wrestling television. And I just think that he has an inflated ego. And because he disappeared for 7 years, I know I'm rambling here, I'm wrapping it up, he just grew himself into a bigger phenomenon than he was actually.
If you take away the pipe bomb in Vegas, the infamous pipe bomb, and that never happened, what is CM Punk's legacy? I mean, like, you look at what he's done in WWE, and he lived off of that for a long time, and he brought a lot of that into AEW. And the fans gave him a massive pop. It's one of the biggest pops I've ever heard in my life. And you know what? I was excited too. It was a pop that gives you chills because people never thought he would return to pro wrestling. He finally does. But then he went on a tirade of, insulting the company and saying that basically he didn't wrestle, in WWE. He blanked that out of his career. Like he doesn't consider that pro wrestling and all that. He is canned WWE so many times publicly. So I don't see, to answer the question that ultimately everyone's asking and pondering, does he return to WWE? If I was WWE, I understand the crowd would go crazy. Oh my God. And I believe Survivor Series is in Chicago. I think, and there's some, and I've tweeted this out. There is a poster going around, fan made, but still, of Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, and oh my God, imagine this. And if it's in Chicago, I understand the allure of it. But honestly, I mean, I don't need CM Punk back. If they want to do a Hall of Fame for him, fine, somewhere down the line. But CM Punk, if he came back, if I'm Punk, I would feel like I'm betraying myself and everything I've said over the last 10 years. I would feel like I'm a sellout. So he'd kind of have to swallow his pride a bit to go back. If I'm WWE, I'm sitting there going, okay, he just embarrassed the company that's paying him hefty amounts of money to be there. He's not acting, as you said, like a professional. He's embarrassing us. He is cancerous in the locker room. And even Seth Rollins, I don't know if you've heard that interview recently over the last, it was like 6 months or so, where someone asked him, would you like to see Punk back? And he said, no, Phil, stay where you are. You're a cancer. He basically called Phil Brooks a cancer in the locker room, and we don't want you anywhere near here. And he was serious. There's not a whole lot of love back there for wanting Punk back. So you have to understand that if you're WWE too, is okay, if you can get over the fact that he embarrassed the company he's working for, do we want him in the locker room? Is he going to be a cancer in the locker room where he's proven to be in the company he just got fired by? So it's, I understand that it may bring in money. Sure. Is it going to bring in a bunch of money? Probably. It will. Fans go crazy, all of that. But do you really, what's it worth? Is it worth causing drama backstage? Is it worth potentially having him embarrass the company? And is it also a good look at all? Is it a good optic to hire a guy that just got fired from a company because he was acting like a non-professional? So I don't know. Your thoughts?
I think WWE would do it just because what's best for business. And I do think WWE and Vince McMahon more specifically has it's kind of like an ego thing for guys to come crawling back. And there's always the ones who crawl back. Like the NWO came back with Razor, Diesel, and Hogan. Bret Hart came back. Warrior came back. San Martino comes back. And CM Punk would be a good get, and I would watch it. I want to see what it was. And I do think, and you've heard some now things like rumblings of, remember when he was at Monday Night Raw a few months ago, and people have said that he was open to returning at the Rumble last year and wanted out of his AEW contract. And maybe there's a part of CM Punk that after going to AEW realized the creative wasn't great over there a lot of the time. And, I think everyone could agree that Vince McMahon has been detached from creative for probably over a decade at this point, but in terms of what the fans want, but it's not a Bush League operation. And I think we could all agree, even if people don't like the creative direction of WWE, it has never been a Bush League operation, or hasn't been for well over 2.5 decades. So maybe for him, it just took being on the other side of the fence and realizing that the grass isn't always greener to want to go back to WWE. And I don't think that you could ever make him like a main eventer, nor do I think he should be. AEW basically brought him in and made him the face of that company. And it was only when he got suspended last year that they kind of put MJF in that role, and that was a damn blessing in disguise, if you ask me. But they really just kind of shoved CM Punk right to being the face of that company. And I don't think WWE would be in that spot at all. I don't even know where you would rank CM Punk. He wouldn't be ahead of Cody, he wouldn't be ahead of Roman, he wouldn't be ahead of Seth Rollins. I mean, even after that, you have some of the younger guys like Damian Priest, who obviously is going to get a major push soon. You see what LA Knight is doing, Austin Theory, Grayson Waller. They obviously have big plans ahead of them. I think that you would probably have CM Punk kind of fall into that AJ Styles, Sheamus category. And if he was willing to take that, and I don't know how he could be willing to ask for more after the stunt he just pulled in AEW, if he wants to come back into professional wrestling and he's willing to take that spot, I don't think it would be that big of a deal. Because the other thing is that even if he did try and embarrass the company, WWE wouldn't promote him as the overarching face of it. He embarrassed the company first and foremost because he did it sitting beside the owner, Tony Khan. And Tony Khan, I hate to say it, clearly doesn't have a strong backbone. He let him disgrace the company while sitting right there. He's clearly pushed around by his talent. I don't think that you would ever see CM Punk cutting a press conference sitting beside Triple H. And you could bet your damn dollar that he would never cut anything remotely close to that with Triple H sitting right there. So I don't think that there'd be a major risk for WWE. I think it would just have to be understood. If you're coming back in the mid-card max.
Look, that's probably the strongest case you could make for him to return, is that WWE, you act like a fool, you're gone. There's you embarrass us, you're gone. No questions asked. See ya. And WWE, you're right. They actually have much more of a spine than Tony Khan. Tony Khan comes off, honestly, I don't know what he's like in real life, but he comes off on camera, especially when he has talent there, like he is just kind of this little shell of a man. For all his money, he certainly is missing a set. Okay, like he's got all the dollars, but no set. Like that's what it feels like with Tony. And I just, again, I don't know him personally, obviously, but that's the feeling I get. And with CM Punk, the problem with that though is if you put him in the mid card, the fans are going to be like, well, why bring him back at all? Like if you're just going to stick him in the mid card to fight for an IC or US title, like, well, why even bring him back? He's not going to be a full-time guy. He's a guy that you would use as kind of a main event guy for a pay-per-view or two every 6 months. And he's probably not going to go on any major title runs, but it would be a massive draw, buzz everywhere. Oh my God, CM Punk's back in WWE after 10 years nearly. So there's a lot of money to be had there, but I don't know if fans would be like, oh cool, he's back, he's going to face Roman, he's going to face Seth. Imagine the promos, and then they stick him with like Ricochet. You know what I mean? Like it's probably not what they do. If you're going to go and bring him back, that's a big move. You're not maximizing your dollars there. You're kind of, and I if I were Punk too, I'd be like, you're gonna put me here, So you're either doing it all in, no pun intended, or you're not. And I would, while the promos between Roman and Punk would be a lot of fun, given everything that he has said about Roman over the years and how, not super negative, but how he was told, make Roman look strong, make Roman look good, all those things that management told him as Roman was coming up in the ranks. He could bring that up and how he was one of the last few guys he worked with before he left. There's a lot of fun to be had with Punk back. And don't get me wrong, would I be very intrigued if I hear, Cult of Personality? Yeah. I'm a wrestling fan. I would be like, I'd be standing up going, oh my God, what is going to happen here? But do I think it's a good business decision? WWE is going to have to decide that and decide if the money that's going to come in is worth the risk of a guy that is a proven liability.
Yeah, it's, I honestly, like, I just don't know, because I don't even, would you want to see him main eventing shows? Would you? Like,
not regularly, like sparingly. He'd be on a very limited schedule.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Like, I would like to see it just for like, okay, he finally came back, and I would like to see a humble version of himself. Like the whole arrogant, rebel thing, like, it kind of, for me, it always had a shelf life, and I always thought he had way too much smoke blown up his rear end. And, we kind of spoke about it. Like, what is CM Punk aside from the summer of Punk? Like, even if we like go back and recount his he was champion for what, 18 months from mid 2011 to early 2013, I believe. Like, his run was good, but it wasn't like the greatest WWE championship run of all time. Like, I didn't think he was a knockout champion by any sorts. Like, I don't know, like, he was good. He just wasn't what people made him out to be, or what he thought he was in his own mind. And I think given the depth of talent in WWE right now, if he came back, he would have to understand his place. But maybe, going to AEW really, made him understand some stuff. And for you, like, obviously neither of us really watch AEW, so we can't speak to the actual wrestling product, but like, has this made you look at the AEW any worse than maybe before, or any better? Like, has it changed your perception of the company at all?
Well, no, I mean, other than just to seeing Tony Khan actually do what he needed to do and probably should have done a long time ago, although he did still do it, was good to see. And he did announce that, he did regrettably have to fire CM Punk. And do I look at AEW any differently? No, kind of the same. I mean, the problem is when you have a guy that runs the company that feels like he is not capable of coming down hard on guys when they need to be, it's difficult to respect a company like that. Now, it's not to say I don't respect the wrestling, I don't respect the wrestlers, but the way the company is run is difficult to respect when it's, inmates run the asylum and you have a guy at the top that is, as Jim Cornette said, a super fan that doesn't seem to really, to lead with an iron fist. It does lend itself to feel like everything's kind of chaotic, and it's whatever the political, agenda of the week is, and who's got the most stroke with the top guys. It feels very I'm imagining kind of like an NWO-ish scenario in the late 90s when Hogan and Nash and Hall were running things backstage, and they were also the talent. Like, they had a ton of political and creative stroke, and they got to choose the guys and gals they worked with and all this. And so it feels very much like that. And that obviously led in part to WCW's collapse. So it kind of cannibalized their own product. It feels like a little bit of that is happening here, not to that extreme. I'm not saying AEW is going to collapse, but they have certainly enough cash to keep themselves going. But I just don't think it's conducive to a respectable way to lead a company when the guy can't even, the head of the company can't even, seemingly grow a set. It just feels that way. But all right, well, I'll leave it there. But any final thoughts here? We're going to wrap this up, guys. Any final thoughts on Punk or? Well, let me ask this ultimately: do you think CM Punk's coming back to WWE?
I think he shows up. In what capacity, I don't know. If it's a one-off, if it's a 3-month run, if it's a Brock Lesnar type of schedule, I'm not sure. But I do think we will see CM Punk on WWE television sooner rather than later.
So before 2023 is over, you're saying we will see here or get hints of Punk?
I think by the Rumble, we'll see CM Punk.
Wow.
Because I also think that even though they don't like to admit it, I think WWE likes any chance to stomp on AEW. And I think bringing in CM Punk would be a major shot across the bow, especially if they make it work. Because if they could make it work, even like you said, on like a part-time schedule basis, I think that would go to show that, like, yeah, this guy can be a bit of a dick sometimes, pardon my language, and a bit of a jerk. But at the same time, we have a structured professional company here, and we could work around his issues, and we could utilize him as a valuable commodity as opposed to the Bush League operation run by the Mark with the billionaire dad. And I think for WWE, that would be a major victory, especially given the fact what they've done with Cody.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think a few of the factors. So first of all, my answer is I do think we'll probably see him back. I'm not heavily leaning that way. The thing is, WWE doesn't need CM Punk. I think CM Punk needs a WWE a little bit more than if it were the other way around. And the reason I say that is I think Punk wants to be able to, in his own mind, stick it to AEW, who he feels mistreated him, and it's run by. You can imagine what he's saying. It's run by amateurs. It's very political. I mean, I know what he's going to probably say. So you're imagining Punk knowing what he's like on camera, probably, trying to damage the company that he just got fired from. So I'm sure there's that impulse from Punk. But do I think WWE needs him? No, they certainly don't need him. The company will be just fine, and it's on the rise. I mean, think about where we were just 5 years ago to where we are now, up and coming stars and all that. So, but I do think we'll see him. I think we'll see him probably before WrestleMania or at WrestleMania or Rumble, that kind of thing. We're getting into that season now. And then, do I want to see him go on a major title run, though? No, I don't. I just want to see him cut some fun promos, get the massive crowd reactions, and kind of have a very here and there schedule over the next 6 to 12 months. Call it a career, and then hang up the boots for good. Because the guy, he's not meant to go multiple times a week or a month, for that matter. So.
No, I agree. I mean, just like have like a proper farewell tour. Like, look, he finally came back. He had a non-dysfunctional professional wrestling run in, the 2020s. I don't know. It's just, it feels like, as much as I don't think he's as big of a star as he thought he was, or as many fans thought he was, I do think he should be remembered better than how it went AEW. And as much as I do think that, a lot of this lies at his own feet, I do think that a big problem is how the operation is run at AEW, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, it's a very country club feel from what I understand. It's kind of, it is. And Inmates Run the Asylum sounds cool. It does. But even if you're the talent there, you're thinking, oh, wow, it's not like, a very hierarchical structure. It's kind of like you can have your own feedback, but that comes with its own downsides. People don't, you think it sounds fun. It sounds cool. But the thing is, then it's kind of, controlled chaos, and it's who knows who, and it's not so much what's best for the company. It's, well, what I'm going to get my stuff in. Who am I going to work? It becomes very much a political, self-centered game. And that's certainly the case no matter, even if you're in WWE, but it's mitigated much more by having a very hierarchical, decision tree or rather, a workflow, or what is I'm trying to say. But there's executive, CEO, VP of creative, all the way down the line. Then you have a room of writers, and that comes with its own downfalls too. But, I think that it's not as good it's not a conducive environment as many people would think in AEW to furthering your career than it is in WWE. But anyway, all right. Well, final thoughts before we wrap.
All I would say is for our listeners to look out for an announcement over the next coming days.
There you go. Yeah, I can confirm that, guys. I'll make an announcement tomorrow on my Monday Night Raw review. I'll keep you guys hooked. If that works, I'll let you guys know what's going on tomorrow night. It's a pretty big deal, so I'll announce that tomorrow at the top of my Monday Night Raw review. Stay tuned for that. But I just want to let you guys know Anthony will be doing a retro this coming week, and I don't know if you had a topic in mind or if we'll kind of figure it out as the days go by here.
I had a topic in mind, but obviously with some stuff in the works behind the scenes, I think it's more of a fluid situation, as this week's retro may be a much bigger and more significant retro than ever before. So we still do have some things in the queue. Maybe we will do Rock's return with Eugene, but I think there's going to be a lot of moving parts in the coming days, and it will depend on how things fall.
There you go, guys. A little teaser. Kind of feel where we're going here. A bit of a teaser. But there'll be a retro on Friday, and it'll be a big one. And then we'll see after that. As I said, we'll let you guys know what's going on tomorrow on Raw. So check that out. And did you want to share social media? I know you as hockey season gets a little closer, maybe you'll want to share that.
Yeah. So ADemarco25 on Twitter. Obviously, going to be more active there as the hockey season gets underway, and maybe after this announcement may get more active there in terms of this podcast and all that. So maybe looking to do some more interactive stuff as well. So yeah, ADemarco25 on Twitter or X or whatever it's called right now.
I know we still call it Twitter. Calling it X just sounds bizarre. So yeah.
All
right. Yeah. Check them out on Twitter, and guys, stay tuned for the announcement, and we'll be talking again real soon.
Looking forward to it, man. Enjoy your night.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.